What is up, Bills Mafia? Get ready for a jam-packed Buffalo Bills week, and we're starting it off with one of 3 episodes of Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. And right now, you can enter for a chance to win $1 million by heading over to Tops Friendly Markets website, topsmarkets.com/redzone, and that'll get you entered. And each week, Kings Hawaiian is pitting 2 cities sliders against each other in the ultimate showdown, and you get to help decide the winner. Vote weekly for your favorite regional slider for a chance to win all season long and earn entries toward the $1 million prize. Explore the interactive stadium to play games, get recipes, share photos, and so much more. We brought AJ in, the producer, for the whole show today because we got a really fun conversation that we're going to get this thing kickstarted off with tonight about, just what it's like to be a Bills fan here in 2022 with the expectation so much. And I'm going to read a DM that I got from a fan that kind of inspired this episode shortly, but we're going to go around the horn a little bit. And this is going to be your show. I put out a request on Twitter. Any questions that you have, we'll dive into any of them with 2 weeks left to go. We'll take a little stroll around probably the AFC East, the AFC as well, with the Bengals here coming up. What is up, Ryan Talbot?
Hey, not too much. I was just telling you pre-show, I got off some roller coasters. My son got the MetaQuest 2 for Christmas, so I was playing some epic roller coasters pre-show, showed up with the Oculus line on the forehead, but having a good time at the Talbot household. How are you guys?
Good, and it faded quickly, which is good. Like that,
yeah.
that's, if you have to go out to dinner with your wife, like it's a date night and you're just jamming on the Oculus, you can go all the way up until you have to get in the car because that thing's going to go away in like 5 minutes.
Gone.
Perfect.
That's right.
AJ? How was your Christmas, buddy?
It was a quiet one. Usually I go over to my grandparents' house, but obviously the Southtowns got hit really hard on Christmas Day. So we had to stay, and we're actually going to celebrate, in a couple days. Weather's warming up, so hopefully I can spend some, Christmas time with my family in the coming days here.
That's great. And I feel like that's what it's going to be. It's going to be like Christmas week. We were talking to my kids today as we drove over to my in-laws, and it's like, yeah, it stunk that, we missed the parties over the Saturday and Sunday, but the good news is that it's going to, like, you're going to get to celebrate Christmas all week long this week with a bunch of different parties over the next few days. All right, let me read this DM. I didn't ask him if it was cool to use his name. I'm sure he wouldn't mind, but I'll just keep it on the down low for now. So after, I believe it was the Miami game, December 18th. So right. Was that right after the Miami game? Do we have a schedule?
I believe so.
Yeah. Miami was December. I think it was the 17th.
So yeah, it was the next day. And so he DM'd me, and I just thought it was interesting. And I told him that we would bring up this topic on the show. And this is what it said. The game yesterday really showed me how much a lot of fans think games should go. Any bad play, it's the end of the world, and then no surprises when we do something awesome, we, the Bills. I'm 21, and before McDermott, essentially my whole life in fandom, the Bills were a trash can franchise. I've had seasons since 2008, and every year was our year to make the playoffs, and now everything is taken for granted. I don't know how you feel about the same situation, but I feel like I could write a novel about how we went from Jeff Toole, Brian Brom, EJ Manuel, and having all the hope in the world with that to having a superhuman quarterback and being so nitpicky. He said, I got home from college yesterday, then hit the game. And the last game I went to before was Titans Monday Night Football. It was unbelievable how people were complaining about defense not showing up. It was clear to see that and this was in the Dolphins game. It was clear to see that the Bills were comfortable in their bend, don't break defense we've seen for the last 4 years, but everyone around was acting like the world was falling because we were forcing field goals and trying to mitigate their superstar track runners at wide receiver. Just the motto of this is our year. And then now when we have a huge window to actually say it and mean it, everyone is so worried about the now and not the big picture. So there's a lot to unpack here. Ryan, I'll let you get started because I have a lot of thoughts, but just the idea of going into a season where the Bills were far and away, and this is a couple decades since any fan could experience. There's generations of fans that are experiencing this phenomenon for the first time. What it's like to go from kind of, start to finish, having these Super Bowl expectations, even with the ups and downs of the season. There's a lot of fans experiencing this for the first time, and I think whenever things appear to be going off track, there seems to be this panic button. And we've talked about it on the show multiple occasions where people are just like the sky is falling because, you know, the defense didn't have the best game. Josh Allen maybe won a couple games without, you know, the superhuman stats. What do you attribute all of that to? And what have been your observations about how the fan base has handled this season chock full of all these expectations?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to the preseason expectations. The Bills are the Super Bowl favorite. The fact that a lot of people are saying, you know, if the Bills had been able, national analysts, mind you, if the Bills been able to hold on to those 13 seconds against the Chiefs, saying they probably could have beaten the Bengals, probably could have represented the AFC in the Super Bowl. You come in the first 2 weeks and you just absolutely destroy teams like the Rams, and you handle the Titans, and then later on in the season it's the Steelers, and then you realize not all games are going to be like that. There's going to be some tight games. There's going to be some hard games that come along. When you are the Super Bowl favorite or a Super Bowl contender, you have a target on your back. Every team is going to give you their best effort. And you can say that about the Bills. You can say that about the Chiefs. You can say that about even the Bengals now. Look at Kansas City a few weeks ago. The Titans went in. That was their the Texans went in. That was their Super Bowl game. They fought hard. They went to overtime with them. It's just when you're one of the top teams, you have this target on the back, and you're not always going to win in blowout fashion. But, Matt, I've been thinking about this too, and it's funny. Not even just when I was 6 was when the Bills went to the 90s Super Bowls. That's when, so I was very young. But even before that, go back to McDermott's first year, 2017. They beat the Dolphins in the regular season finale. You get help from the Bengals beating the Ravens. No one in their right mind thought the Bills were winning the Super Bowl that year. But think about all the tears. Think about all the excitement. Now, if they just get to the playoffs, it's not good enough. It's just the acceleration of where the team was to where they are now. They actually have the quarterback. They were supposedly we're going to have the pass rusher Von Miller out for the year, obviously. They have the defensive pieces. They have the offensive pieces. This was supposed to be that year where it all came together after coming so close the past 2 years. So I get where the fan base is coming from, but I think that person who sent you the message has it exactly right too. The expectations are almost too high because we're sitting here at 12-3, the Bills, that is, and people are finding reasons to complain about their record and where they're currently at, which is first in the AFC.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem with, the last going through the 17-year playoff drought as a Bills fan is that you were, naming all those quarterbacks that he mentioned in the DM, they were at just such a low of low. And when Tyrod was there and, they got the job done against Miami, and Cincy went on to beat them in the locker room. And fans were so excited to, experience that moment. I was in the same boat. I was, my whole first 17 years of life, I never got to experience, a playoff game or anything like that. So now I was like, as I've, adjusted to that and been able to, experience, a team that's done well the past few years, I think it's interesting. And a conversation that even I, could think from this is, what was harder to go through 17 years of no playoffs or, 4 Super Bowl losses from a fan perspective, because I look at my dad and my dad's, kind of, a negative or optimistic fan in terms of because he went through all of that. He went through 17 years and the 4 Super Bowls. So for me, and actually taking this role as the producer and seeing, the fans go, going through the comments each week, it's really, made me realize that it's really 1 week at a time in this league. And there's a lot of things that change throughout the season. And look at like Ryan said, the Texans, almost beat the Chiefs. It's a week to week league, and, high expectations are necessary for a team that's talented, but at the same time, it's the NFL. It's a week-to-week league, and teams can win any given week.
There's a couple things that I said, over the course of the last 2 weeks, whether it be on social media or in the show, and they're so true. And it's something that it really took me to start covering the league to truly understand. Like I was, as a fan years ago, I was so reactionary to everything. I mean, Sammy Watkins had a big game. Oh man, this offense is coming together. It's happening finally. Kyle Orton finds a way to throw 3 touchdown passes, and he's the answer. And there's so many moments as a fan where you talk yourself into something being sustainable or being able to enter the conversation. And we're seeing a live look at a build in Miami that's led to this year. Everything right now how this thing is built in Miami. You know, drafting Tua, going through the court or the head coaching change, reloading once they brought in Mike McDaniel, getting Tyreek Hill, adding Taron Armstrong. Like, it all was to be for this year. And we saw magical moments for this Dolphins team all season long. I mean, some record-breaking performances. They were on pace to break records. And we've seen what's happened when the games get really tough, when the calendar turns to December. You know, the train can come off the tracks really soon. Now, they can get them back on the tracks. They can still make the playoffs. They could still make a run if things, you know, end up right with Tua and everything going on with the concussion. Maybe his third of the season, which is something we probably should talk about at some point over the course of the show, which is crazy. Undocumented against the Bills, obviously, but he left that game, came back in. A lot of people thought that there was maybe a concussion suffered in that game. So that's a piece of this. You know, the other piece of it for me is, so I grew up, obviously, well documented on the show as a diehard Bills fan. And I was the eternal optimist of my group, right? Like, I was the one that glass is always, you know, half full, whereas my dad, my uncles, they were always like the glass is half empty. I was at the greatest comeback game ever. The Oilers ran all over the Bills, threw it all over the Bills. Warren Moon was on his way to a huge road playoff win, and my dad was ready to hightail it out of there. And I told him, get out of here. This is my first ever playoff game. We're not leaving this game, right? Like, I was always that eternal optimist. I chose to look at everything that way. And I think, like, to answer this fan's question about, like, is it an overreaction? I just think everybody experiences the game and being a fan their own way. And I think some people work their way through situations by looking at all potential negatives. So when the negative ends up happening, it's not as, you don't take it as hard. But here's the truth of it. It doesn't matter how you handle it. If you're the eternal optimist or you're the eternal negative Nancy of the group, you're going to experience that heartache or that, like, and I was a Bills fan for 35 years. I never experienced what a Super Bowl championship felt like, but I've talked to people that have been long suffering fans that, you know, won a championship, whether it be, you know, Red Sox fans for all those years or Dallas Mavericks fans when Dirk Nowitzki brought them. A little bit different. You know, that franchise doesn't go as far back, but the point of it is, however you experience the game, whatever you use as your mechanisms to cope, you're going to experience the things on the other side, no matter what happens, because that's what being a fan is. A fanatic is just feeling really something passionately for what you're, you know, cheering for.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. And, you know, I see people in here talking about curses and things like that, and curses are a myth. And you had mentioned the Red Sox. My brother's a diehard Chicago Cubs fan. So he sat through, obviously, the Ryan Sandberg years with a lot of fun players, but no success. You had the Kerry Wood, the prior years where they had great pitching, couldn't get it done. And then finally they win it all. So, you know, when it comes to the Bills, and in the NFL, only one team can win the Super Bowl every year. Only one team can win the World Series, and it's the same for every other sport. So, yes, the Bills haven't done it in most of our lifetimes. If you're a long-standing Bills fan, AFL championship, possibly you saw it at some point in your life, but it can happen, and it can happen at any point. It's not bad luck. It's not a curse. It's just the matter of all of it coming together at the right time. And the Bills right now, as that fan said, that window is open. It's going to be open for the foreseeable future, but obviously you want to see them win one sooner rather than later and build off of that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think, Matt, to what you said, like my dad, I used to be kind of like the glass half empty kind of fan. And now the last few years, not, and especially really this year, like, again, like saying, doing this like role and like being a part of what you guys do, it's really allowed me to take a step back and realize, you know, football's a tough game and all that. But like you said, Matt, like at the end of the day, if I'm more like a positive person now. My dad's kind of like the other side. But at the end of the day, if they won the Super Bowl or if we lose another 13 seconds, it's going to be the same exact feeling, and we're not, have the same exact, you know, feeling about that experience. So it is a very true point you brought up.
Every team in the NFL has deficiencies, right? Like, things are going so well in San Francisco. They look like a freight train, like that's about to hit the playoffs, right? But Brock Purdy hasn't experienced playing against a really, really good defense, and he's going to have to probably run through potentially the Cowboys, the Eagles. There are things set up there that could be really hard for them. Jalen Hurts has had this magical MVP caliber season, but again, he hasn't really had to do it in the playoffs. I want to transition here a little bit because I want to talk about this Nick Wright topic. I put out a bit that he did on his show this week, and we'll talk a little bit about what he said. And I put out this one. I wanted this to be a Q&A episode as well. And my son's here standing off to the side, little audience. What's up, buddy? You all right?
I'm not going up until you read the letter.
All right, buddy. I'll be up in a bit, okay? Did mom go get the food?
All pizza stores are closed.
All the pizza stores are closed?
Yep.
That's tough. All right, I'll bring it up in a minute, okay? Love you. There goes AJ. AJ's got the Hooper jerseys up in the background. There you go.
Yeah, I've been collecting them. I got Ant-Man, Curry, Cat, Antetokounmpo, Zion, and Jokic hanging out.
Nice.
So that's
you gotta start an NBA podcast soon. That's pretty sick.
That's not my favorite.
All right, cool. So Nick Wright had a little bit about Josh Allen. So first of all, two things before we get to what he actually said. Two things. Number one, we've talked about this before about Nick Wright. This is a shtick, everybody, right? Like, what sells at this point is anything that's involved with Bills Mafia. Like, you get the Twitter buzz if you say anything positive, negative. Look how Miami Dolphins fans have leaned into this rivalry this year, because like there was this one guy, I think his name was like Nicky Cheeks or something like that, or Nicky Streets. I don't know. He had this like viral video after the Miami game down there where he was like pushing through people and like swearing. And I think he swore at one of the cool Bills super fans. He was the chef. Yeah. And like he leaned into it. Like every tweet was about Bills Mafia because it gets traction. And so of course these people want to, get that kind of traffic or eyes on their stuff. So Nick Smokes, there you go. Excuse me. Cheeks. I don't know why I called him that. I don't know. That was just sticking in my head. Anyway, so Nick Wright, this bit against Josh Allen and the Bills, it plays because anytime he can find any like type of thing to dig in on, he knows it's going to get people going. So he basically went in today about Josh Allen's stats since week 6. And, long and short of it, from a passing perspective, they're not great. I mean, he's got 15 passing touchdowns, 20 total touchdowns, which you didn't mention, 5 rushing, which didn't really fit the narrative. So I'm pretty sure that's why he omitted that. And just some of the numbers, the, passer rating, the QBR, the yards. I mean, they were at like middle of the pack, a bunch of them. Some of them were even lower. Didn't talk about in the entire 2-minute hit, the elbow injury. Didn't talk about that. Didn't talk about any of the weather games that they played, the game plan that they've used to try to get their running game going in the middle part of that section. And he also didn't really talk about this, Ryan. Last season, Josh Allen had 21 from week 7 till week 18, had 21 passing touchdowns, 25 total touchdowns. Okay. Right now, Josh Allen has, with 2 games to go, 15 passing touchdowns and 20 total touchdowns. So he potentially, at the end of week 18, could have more passing touchdowns and more total touchdowns than he did a year ago. So the whole argument is just anything to find to get people going. That's what he does, and that's what he kind of thrives on.
Yeah, again, it's the narrative. It's what he wants. There's a reason I've had the guy muted on Twitter for a few years now. It's don't give the guy the reaction, and eventually he'll move on. But at the end of the day, Josh Allen is like you said, could come close to matching or surpassing his stats from last year. He's still a weapon with his legs. He's been playing with an elbow injury. He's played in a lot of bad weather games this year at home. He's had to play one on the road. They had to play 3 games in 11 days and one of them in, back to back in Detroit. So they've gone through a lot this year, a lot more than maybe any other team has had to go through. And the Bills are still 12-3. Josh Allen's stats could end up being very similar, if not better than last year. It comes down to it being a shtick.
Yeah, and like you said, Nick, right? That's what he does. It's kind of like the Skip Bayless for the Cowboys. I almost live for Skip after like a Cowboys win or loss. His tweets are just absolutely funny. But speaking about Nick Wright, I just want to think about Allen and how he's played. I don't know how much Nick Wright watches the Bills, But you can go back to several games where, numbers are numbers, but you look at the Miami game, Allen had that 50, 60-yard scramble to set up the game-tying touchdown. You have the Detroit Lions game when they went and tied the game up. He gets the ball back with 22 seconds, throws a laser to Diggs over the middle, sets up the game-winning field goal. So there's moments in that, and his numbers aren't that great stats-wise. But if you look and watch the games, he's put this team in positions to win. Obviously, his defense has played really well. But at the end of the day, Allen, in my opinion, I think he is the most valuable player on any team. He's not going to win the award this year, I think, because Mahomes' numbers are, obviously better and they're playing really well. But in my opinion, I think Allen really is the most valuable player in this league. And stats might not show it the past, 10, 11 weeks. But if you watch the games, he's put him in positions to win, and he's got the job done.
If you're making any point on Josh Allen and you don't bring up his scorched earth run of 9 touchdown passes in 2 playoff games last year, I just have zero respect for you. What's funny is I actually do like Nick Wright. Like, before I started doing this, I mean, when he first got his start with Colin Cowherd, and part of these guys' job, you got to understand, like, from a sports media perspective, when you're in, like, as a talking head, you literally get paid based on the kind of controversy you create with the words that you spew. I mean, it's why Stephen A. Smith has been so popular, and obviously Skip Bayless and some of these other guys over the course of their careers. So there's a piece of that you got to troll a little bit. Otherwise, you got to create a reason why people are talking about you. And I really liked his basketball analysis back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually obviously turned out to be a huge LeBron James homer, which I was for a while. Phil, maybe that's why I really loved everything that he was kind of spewing about LeBron James. But from an Allen perspective, I think when a guy proves it in January, the way that Josh Allen did last year, for me, he gets the benefit of the doubt. It's why no matter what Patrick Mahomes was going through last year, I still said you're going to have to beat Patrick Mahomes when it gets to playoff time. And I know he got things right before the Bills and the Chiefs played, but that's never going away. Elite quarterbacks that raise their level of play to that in the playoffs. I mean, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady before Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, we've seen, other, contemporary quarterbacks that have kind of been able to do the same. That just delivers a different amount of respect. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, I know it hasn't ended well for him the last couple of years, but he's made big time plays and big time spots in big time games and playoff games. So for me, that's more important.
Yeah, and you said it. I mean, that was maybe the greatest playoff game ever played last year. Allen and Mahomes went back and forth, both leading their teams. And when you are part of one of those great games like that, you do earn the benefit of the doubt. And
don't forget that Nick Wright, after that game, was just sitting there on whatever his show is. What is it? First Take?
First things first. First things first.
First things first. They're all whatever. Yeah, first things first. And he's sitting there and he's like, I don't know what to say. I was wrong. That was one of the best games I've ever seen, or something like that. I can't remember the exact clip, but I remember somebody sharing it. So, yeah, it is what it is. Like, you want Allen to play better, but there's also another component to this, guys, too. And this is something that there's so much, like, what separates the Houston Texans and the Buffalo Bills or the Philadelphia Eagles? It's just like inches. Like, it's just, I know that the talent discrepancy is massive, but we've seen the way that they've played over the course of the last couple of weeks. I mean, they almost beat who did they just beat? Did they beat the Titans?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They beat the Titans. They almost beat the Chiefs, and they're the worst team in the league. They're probably going to get the first overall pick in this league. Everything is so condensed. Everybody's so close together. And so what I think teams try to do, the reason Sean McDermott and Ken Dorsey and Leslie Frazier talk so much about balanced attacks on both sides of the ball, playing complementary football, is because the more you're able to throw at a team in terms of what they have to prepare for, the more difficult it is to play against you. So if Josh Allen was just running, rampant over the entire league all season long, throwing the ball around the yard and just unleashing their entire playbook on every team that they play, there's nothing that you're going to be able to go to in the playoffs when you need a change of pace. And so I think part of it is, like, we haven't seen a single trick play. Can you remember a trick play that the Bills have run all season long? To me, that gets me thinking, like, I think they're saving some stuff for the playoffs because,
right.
And we probably haven't seen all that they're going to try to do in the playoffs because they're evolving. They're getting smarter. They've been in this situation before. They've been in the race for the 1 seed. And as important as that is, I went back and looked, there was a run there where I think it was the Denver Broncos, the New England Patriots a couple of years. But I think 4 of the last 5, the number 1 seed hasn't gone to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. The only time that it happened was KC a couple of years ago against the Bills, and they lost in the Super Bowl. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and we'll see where it all goes here in the playoffs. But with the trick plays, I agree, and there's still so much to this offense that I think that they can unravel too, with Cole Beasley just being back for a few weeks. And I don't want to get too far into the fan questions, but I know one of the questions was how do elevations work in the playoffs? Well, they're unlimited, so you could, if Cole Beasley wasn't on the main roster, they could elevate him every single week for the playoffs. Same with John Brown. I still think maybe getting Beasley to the main roster is part of their plan at some point, but that'll be interesting. And I still think they're trying to figure out how to utilize these talents best. But you mentioned there's the trick plays as well. There's still a lot to this offense that I think can be done. I don't want to sit here and say that I think Micah Hyde can return, but there's always that glimmer of hope there too. And if you get that safety duo back and Trey White, getting better and better each week, that defense will be very scary too.
Yeah, and people are asking about like roster spots like available. I mean, I think you're going to start to see like guys like Tommy Sweeney, guys like Dean Marlowe, guys like even Cam Lewis, who has had a couple of plays that probably aren't earning him big time rave reviews around the league if he hits the waiver wire. Like the Bills might get to a point where Beasley is so important to them, a healthy Micah Hyde is so important to them that they decide to risk it and try to get one of those guys back on the practice squad. And who knows? I mean, if one of those guys, appear, I think this Tommy Sweeney's fourth year, right?
I'm trying to think if it is.
I think this is his fourth year. He was drafted in 19, right?
Okay.
He was the same draft year as Ed Oliver. So this is his fourth year. If you cut him and somebody else picks him up, it could be a situation like you've seen in the past where, guys have gone on to other places and hasn't worked out. Jake Kummerow is a perfect example. When he got, plucked off the practice squad by New Orleans, ends up on the roster for camp the very next year. So some of these decisions, are going to, you're just going to have to force your hand, because this is now that window of time where you got to, make some hard decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So here's what we did. So a couple things before we get too far down the line here. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the show as well. If you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate you hanging out with us on this Tuesday evening. We're going to have 3 podcasts this week. So we got this one. We have the Thursday show, which is going to serve as the staple show because the Bills pushed everything back this week. So we're going to do Thursday night show, and then we will have the preview early, hopefully on Saturday. That might even be a morning show. We'll see. We'll toss some ideas around here, and feel free to add them in the comment section. Drop your questions. I see 2 are already up here right now. We'll take those first, and then we're going to head over to Twitter, where I think we had like 15 questions that were dropped. I asked for a little mini mailbag, and we'll fire through all of those. We want to start, Ryan. You want to start with Troy's question here?
Yeah, let's start with Troy's. All
right. So 2-part question. Do you want to keep Motor after this season or move on? And then the second part is, if you keep him, do you think he is willing to take a lower rate to stay here, or he takes a higher contract and is out? You want to start? Or you want to start?
No, go ahead and start.
So I do have a take here on this, and thank you, Troy, for that question. I think it's a really good one. And I think what we've seen with James Cook coming on, it's going to have to make a ton of sense financially for the Bills to bring him back. He's going to have to hit the open market, not see the kind of deals or opportunities that he was kind of hoping for, and then maybe be willing to take a smaller chunk of change. But I also think what could be at play here, Ryan, it's something that, we've talked about, is that they've drafted guys, signed guys. I think that they might be in business for maybe an AJ Dillon type to pair with James Cook. Right now, a lot of what James Cook and Devin Singletary do, and I know what you're going to say, Devin Singletary is not nearly as fast as James Cook, and I understand that. I appreciate that. But in terms of the style of runners that they are and how they win, neither one of them is really that bruising back that's going to, as good of a tackle breaker as Devin Singletary is, he's not going to run into a gang of tacklers and drag them 5 or 6 yards. So I think what maybe the idea should be is, you have James Cook, who's now a rookie, who's proven that you could probably hand the reins to him as RB1 as early as next year, if not right now, if you didn't have Devin Singletary. So you keep him as the starter moving forward. You see what happens with Singletary, but if that doesn't materialize, draft a running back, sign a running back, however you want to kind of shake it out. You have Nyheim Hines, who's under contract next year. He's probably still going to be in the mix. I think that's more than enough as you look forward.
Yeah, and listen, running backs, and I'm not trying to just discredit Devin Singletary, but there are 7th-round running backs this year, undrafted free agent running backs that have made contributions to teams this season. Pacheco in Kansas City is an example of one. You can find good backs late in this draft coming up. But first, am I open to bringing him back? Yeah, absolutely. If I were the Bills, I think he's been very good for this team. He went over 1,000 yards from scrimmage last week. I'm going to name some names for you now. You have Tony Pollard, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, Saquon Barkley. Those are just some of the potential free agents that could hit the market this season. With those names, all of those I would think would be ahead of Devin Singletary in terms of what teams would be willing to pay and what they're looking for. Bijan Robinson in the draft, Sean Tucker out of Syracuse, and so many more as well. It's going to be a tough market for running back. So I think what could potentially happen is Singletary, like you said, hits the market. Maybe the money is not there that he was hoping for. And I think the Bills could say, listen, if you want to come back and play and contend for a title, here's what we'll offer you. And I think they could kind of meet somewhere in the middle because, like you said, James Cook, averaging 5.8 yards per carry, most in the league with a minimum, I think, of 75 carries. You have Nyheim Hines. You can always draft players. Can you replace him? Yes. But would it be as easy to replace that production? No, not right out of the gate.
AJ, you have a choice. 1 year, $4.5 million contract next year for Devin Singletary or Jordan Phillips. Who do you give it to?
Jeez. Oh, that's tough. I would probably
We're
go.
not giving you softballs here on Shout, man. Like
No. It's like is not that like is neither an option, but like I don't know.
That's fair. That's
all
fair.
Right. I would go neither, just because like I think obviously Phillips is a depth piece. He's done well this year, but I think injuries have kind of stopped him from playing as well as he
stay
could.
Healthy.
Yeah,
that's the truth of the matter at this point. Like Jordan Phillips cannot stay healthy. It's the reason why things soured so badly in Arizona. And I thought coming in here, he did a really good job of staying healthy with the Bills the first run. It's the reason why he earned that contract. But the problem is he's 3 years older, which playing at his size, at his age, it gets tougher and tougher every year. I'd put him on ice for the next 2 weeks. And as much as you need to win these games, you're going to need him for the playoffs too. And I don't know if he's playing at 100%. Every time he put a hit on somebody this weekend, he was kind of holding the shoulder.
Yeah. And I think Singletary, he's done really well. Like Ryan said, over 1,000 yards of scrimmage this year. But I think going back to the original question, I think there's a very slight chance that they resign him just because of the fact they've always been with McDermott. They've always, had that running back by committee. And paying for a guy, if they can make the money work, yes, they'd love to have him back. But I think through the draft, a cheap free agent option, they have Hines and Cook coming back. Cook showed a lot these past few weeks. I think the smart decision would be move on from Singletary, find a guy in free agency or the draft to pair with Cook, and keep using Hines on gadget plays with McKenzie. Who knows where he is next year. Hines could kind of fill that role if McKenzie walks. So you got a lot of options, but Singletary being here next year, I really don't think there's a great chance of that, just based on money, how he's produced, and everything else.
23-21. Big dub today for the Buffalo Bills in the Camillus Bowl. Is that what you call it? I don't have it up in front of me, but okay, is that it? Camillus Bowl?
I believe so. Yeah. And now is that 3 straight bowl wins? Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
How about that? Cole Schneider and his swan song. He's transferring, I guess. 21
Everyone's transferring these days.
260. I know who's not. I mean, literally the story in college football at this point is who's not transferring. I mean, I think those guys should get some stories written about them. 265 and a tud. Field goal in the fourth quarter was the difference. They took out the Georgia Southern Eagles. Tyler Bass, proud alum. Tough one for that. I'm gonna have to mention that to him in the locker room on Thursday. We'll see. All right. So yeah, I want to give him a little shout out. Thanks for reminding me. That's great. So we're going to take questions. if you did I say Bills?
You said Bills, and yeah,
Maybe Bulls. My bad. Blame the day job. I apologize about that. So I put this out. We have a bunch of questions on Twitter, but those of you watching on YouTube right now, thank you so much. We appreciate you. You are awesome. Hit that like button, subscribe to the show as well. We're going to start making our way through these questions. If you have some, drop them in here, and we'll do what we just did with the first two, and we will bring them onto the screen, and we will talk about them. Here we go. The first question is, I think we already talked about the practice squad elevations.
Yeah.
If you could make one change on the team, what would it be? Position, scheme, play calling, etc. Why don't you start, Ryan?
You could easily go position here and just add a stud at whatever position you want. I feel like that would almost be like the easy choice. Say, oh yeah, trade up for Sauce Gardner from this year's. I don't know. I don't know if that's really a fair argument or a fair conversation to have. I like their scheme. I like the bend, don't break. I like the fact that they have trust in the two linebackers, that they are so efficient in the back end. So for me, it's a really tough one. Would I like to see some more of those gadget trick plays? Yes. So maybe that's what it comes down to. But like you said, Matt, maybe they're holding off on that until the playoffs to really uncover a few new wrinkles with this offense. So I'm kind of stumped on this one. What about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of stumped on it too. It's kind of like a strange question because not strange. I shouldn't say that. Thank you for the question, Rich,
Yes.
Over on Twitter. No, I appreciate it. It's just trying to work it through. Like what can be. There's a lot of things that can be improved about the team, but they're sitting here at 12-3. They're kind of working through some things. Like the run game has really been good. I think the offensive line. Shout out to for two guys that we've been kind of down on for the course of this season, and still their pass protection is an issue. But Spencer Brown and Roger Saffold both. I went back and watched the Bears game. They both had monster blocks. Brown, I think, on a Singletary run, and on Cook's first run that went for 20+ yards, Saffold got downfield and just pancaked the guy and sprung him for another 10 to 15 yards. I mean, those are huge kinds of plays. And again, the Bears defense was, I mean, literally, I don't know if most XFL rosters are probably going to field a better defense than the Bears had on Saturday, but still, you want to give them credit for making those kind of plays in the game. What would I change? I think I'd probably go back in time and be a little bit more urgent drafting on the offensive line. Like for me, that's the spot I feel like as we sit here right now, it's the position group where there's the least amount of options. You're relying on Ike Butker, who's coming off of this injury. And listen, I didn't actually go back and look specifically at his snaps. He didn't really pop out to me too much, which probably tells you he did a pretty good job in the limited snaps that he did have. But if he ends up having to play a significant role, like, you saw a couple offensive linemen go down in that game, or one was out, one went down in that game. If he ends up having to go in and play 60 snaps, are you ready? Can you give him that kind of workload? You could be in a situation where you're really relying on Bobby Hart. Far be it for me to say. I mean, if there's a couple injuries, he could be your starting left tackle. I mean, that's how close you are to that. So without those kind of moldable pieces where I feel like they played that game a little bit better over the course of the last few years, I think they were banking on, Tommy Doyle being available, and you can't predict season-ending injuries. But I think just in general, drafting O-line is where I think they just have to be a little bit more urgent, a little bit more aggressive, and try to have a few more flavors here as we move forward.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I could joke around and say Micah Hyde and Von Miller. Like, those are two pieces that I think the Bills are missing on defense. A star pass rusher and that safety opposite Poyer. But if I'm being realistic, I think like a viable slot option. I know people are, banging on the door for Cole Beasley, and they added him to the roster. But a guy in the slot that can get open, get those 5-yard passes, and run up field for a couple more. I think that's the biggest thing that if it was 2-3 years ago and the Bills were in this position and Cole Beasley was 2-3 years younger, I think that would be a huge addition to this offense, and they'd be probably the top scoring offense in football right now.
Just one point on the Cole Beasley thing. Like, I think we saw what he can be for this offense, right? It was a second and long, I think. And he got a catch over the, left side, got a, 7-8 yards of rack.
It might have been 9.
Short.
Might have been 9. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that to me is what I think you're looking for, right? Out of that spot. but why didn't they use him more? Like, you're trying to get Cole Beasley up to speed here. What do you end up having? Like six or seven snaps in that game? That's wild, because it's like, if you have that plan, and I know like Ken Dorsey bangs his drum about like the game plan evolves over the course of the game. I get that completely. But I think Cole Beasley is in a spot, and here, maybe part of it is like they're trying to keep him healthy. And like that might be, what's at stake here. They've run him out there early in seasons. He's gotten banged up and it hasn't looked good later in the year. So maybe they're saying like, we know what he can do in this offense. Let's hold off to the playoffs. Then we'll really start to get him involved. But then why burn one of his practice squad elevations? Because now you're going to use a situation where, unless you know for a fact, like you mentioned earlier, Ryan, that they're going to bring him up to the active roster, after that final elevation, or however that ends up looking for the Patriots game. I get that part of it, but it's just a little bit confusing, like the usage versus maybe just, keeping him down for that game, because you are going against the Bears and you were planning on using Isaiah McKenzie as much as you did anyway, and Khalil Shakir, who got quite a bit of snaps. So just a little bit puzzling there on Beasley.
Yeah, and it might come down to how the way they were blocking up front for the backs in that game. They went over 206 total yards between the two of them. Maybe they felt like they were better off with different personnel on the field. Maybe they are just trying to keep Beasley healthy and saying, listen, we know what you can do. We're going to bring you out there a handful of snaps each game. Come playoff time, we'll really unleash you. And he might be more than okay with that, because we don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
All right, let's go to the next question here. If you have a question, drop them on YouTube. Drop them on the side in the comment section. AJ is going to be producing his little butt off and make sure to bring him on the table. I think this is your best lighting job to date.
Yeah. I don't have my weird lights, my LED lights. I got the greatest point guard of all time to the right. I mean, what can you bet? What else can you ask for?
It doesn't feel like we're in the club, but everything else is just chef's kiss. Here we go. All right, next question. I like this. This is Cuse Fanatics fan. He's got two questions. We'll take the first one first. If you had to pick one player, who does the Bills D try to shut down against the Bengals on Monday Night Football? Which is really interesting, because I feel like how the Bills have handled the Miami Dolphins, a couple weeks ago, Trey White was lining up on Jalen Waddle a lot in that game, and they had a completely separate plan for Tyreek Hill. So do you think that maybe Tre'Davious White goes up against T. Higgins in this game, and then they, kind of come up with a plan, maybe by committee, to deal with Jamar Chase? What do you think, Ryan?
It's possible, but if I had to choose one to shut down, it would be Jamar Chase every single time. I've seen the guy take over games. He had 200 plus yards and 3 touchdowns last year in the regular season against the Chiefs. He can just be that dynamic receiver that can give you absolute headaches. So if there was one player that I would focus on shutting down, it would be Chase. But man, that wide receiver roster, and I know Tyler Boyd is kind of taking a step back from the T. Higgins and the Jamar Chases of that roster, but that's still a strong trio. They have a phenomenal quarterback. They did just lose one of their most important offensive linemen, but it's still going to be such a fun game to watch.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with T. Higgins with the production. I pulled the stats up because I've been watching Red Zone, and I feel like he's been in the end zone a lot. The last 4 weeks, he's actually had one touchdown in each game and probably somewhere around 300 yards. So I think shutting him down, taking him out of the game, yes, Chase is a game wrecker. He was on my fantasy team last year, and he did really well for me. But T. Higgins is a guy that has played really well this year. They have familiarity. He has over 1,000 yards already this season. I feel like he's been really producing. If you can kind of disrupt that. And Hayden Hurst is also a candidate where he's kind of that, Burrow likes the tight end. CJ Uzama last year played really well for them. He's kind of fallen off with the Jets and that whole Zach Wilson, Mike White, debacle. But besides that, I think T. Higgins is a very, good player, and shutting him down would be a good thing for the Bills to do.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, huge hit this week for the Bengals. La'el Collins out for this season. It looks like, although he was one of their least effective pass blocking offensive linemen, he did a little bit better in the run game. So we'll see how that affects what they do. I mean, they have some really good guys on the interior, so I think it's going to be. Listen, this is going to be an Ed Oliver game. We're going to get into all of this over the next 2 shows. This is going to be an Ed Oliver game I really want to talk about and like pinpoint him, because this is probably one of the better interior offensive lines that he'll have faced over the last 5 or 6 weeks. And another DM that I got recently was about, if we could spend some time on a show, like putting Quinnen Williams against Ed Oliver and like, how the two careers have kind of gone. And Quinnen Williams has been this absolute like stud, 10 plus sack season, like game wrecker. And, the stats just haven't been there for Oliver. Now I do think we have like a little bit of a revisionist history sometimes. We got to be careful about that. Quinnen Williams was by the time we got to the draft, was the definitive DT1 in that draft. Like there was never a question about like, was it going to be Quinnen Williams first or Ed Oliver first? It was going to be Quinnen Williams first, no matter what. Kind of like Sauce Gardner, kind of in this draft, although the Derek Stingley thing happened at the last second. So what do I know? But, that was always going to be the case. Now, I think the other question was going to be, would the Bills have had to have traded up in that draft to get Ed Oliver? I'm not so sure. But, I think Ed Oliver's been really, really good for this defense. But some of his stronger games, Ryan, have come against teams that have been really banged up on their interior offensive line or not very good. So I think now he's got to show it, with some of these game-changing plays in a game against a team where that is their kind of their strength of their team. I mean, Karras, who's Kappa. I think they have another piece on the interior there. And then obviously on the outside there, Jonah Williams playing pretty well for them. They have some pieces there that are pretty good that I think are going to challenge all of those interior pieces.
Yeah, well, you just mentioned it. Talk about a team that shored up their offensive line. They saw what the offensive line did to Burrow early in his career. They saw how close they were to winning it all last season. Said we have to go out and really invest in this, and they did via free agency. And they spent some draft picks, and it's impressive to see what they've done, because early in the year they had their struggles, but once they started gelling, they've been a really good unit. They've protected Burrow really well. They've kept him upright. I feel like he's only been sacked about once per game over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So they're doing a great job at this point. They're running pretty well with Samaje Perine and company, and we know about the passing game. So it's going to be a real tough challenge for the Bills on Monday night.
All right, let's go to the next question here. OBJ still in the cards for the playoffs? I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I'm going to say no, too. I don't think he's going to be ready this year.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on that one. Will Christian Benford start practicing this week? If and when he gets activated, who gets cut? And like I mentioned, there's a couple different candidates, I think, all over the roster that you kind of play around with, depending on, what you need that week and who you can get back on the practice squad. That's like Dean Marlowe, I feel like, are guys that you could really work with. He's done it before. We've cut him and brought him back. So I think the Benford thing is going to be really interesting. Like, how do they view this thing? And I think it's a problem that's kind of simmering. Like, what do they? I think Kyrie Elam's played pretty well the last couple of weeks. Like, yeah. I'm at a point now with Elam where I think it should be like at minimum 60-40 with Dane Jackson. Like, I think we should start seeing, 3 series for Elam to 1 series for Dane Jackson just to see what it looks like. And I know I kind of stand for Jackson a little bit. He made a really nice play against the Bears, but I just think it's that time of year where you got to kind of pull Elam back. He's a first-round draft pick. You got to watch from the sidelines a little bit. Now kind of like just see what he can do out there. I think you're going to really – you mentioned T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase. You're going to need him, I think, his speed on Monday night.
Yeah, I agree completely. He's been very good, and I'm sure the Bills have had their reasons for the slow play, getting him back out there. He dealt with some injuries at one point this season, but you got to kind of let him go at some point, see what he can really do over the course of the game, giving him 75% of the reps, maybe 80% of the reps over Dane Jackson, having him play opposite Trey White. And then when it comes to Benford, listen, Benford played pretty well early on in the season. As the year went on before the injury, he was getting exposed a little bit more in terms of being beaten at times, but he's still going to be a valuable contributor to this team. So it wouldn't be a surprise if they brought him back. And like you said, they can tinker with the roster in a lot of ways. So I'm not sure that they have a set player position in mind for that. But they still have Xavier Rhodes as well. So all of a sudden, cornerback is quickly becoming maybe a position of strength, at least in terms of depth and numbers.
Yeah, I think
you're watching, by the way. We got 300 watching live on YouTube. We got to get those likes up. We're not even to 100 likes on this episode.
Come on.
We're going through all the questions. We're about to take all the YouTube questions. If you got one on Twitter, throw one at me. If you got one on Facebook, go for it. But let's get those likes up. I want to get to 200 by the end of the show. We still got a lot of questions to get through, so we might be here for a few more minutes. Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think Elam's played well when he's played. It is confusing, them not using him as much as I thought they would. But I think when it comes down to it, like, I think at the end of the season, I think he's going to do really well. And I think he's going to be starting opposite. If it's not totally, 100% of the snaps opposite Trey, I think he'll be getting around, 60, 70% of the snaps, maybe work Benford in. I think Dane Jackson has just been such a liability at points this season that I think you have to bet on your first round pick that you drafted, that you traded up to get. And when games matter the most, opposite Trey White, I think you have to put him out there.
I just wonder if your view of Dane Jackson or evaluation of Dane Jackson's year is different than Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott's. And that's what would, I guess, worry me if I'm a Bills fan about what this rotation looks like down the stretch. Like, I really think they're going to struggle to go away from him. Like, they refused to do it for years with Levi Wallace. And I thought, too, like, there was a point when Josh Norman was playing really at a high level there. And when by a high level, I mean like a higher level than Levi Wallace was playing at that juncture, and they still would not go away from it. I mean, the Kevin Johnson era, right? Remember him coming over from the Texans. So, yeah, it's interesting. We got a lot of questions here. I want to get to as many as we can. I think this is a fun one. Would you rather have the Patriots lose and be eliminated before Bills play the Patriots, or would you rather knock out the Patriots? What's funny about this question, Ryan, is that I think the best case scenario in two ways is the Patriots to win this week because, A, it keeps them in the race and potentially, first of all, it gives the Dolphins another loss, which I think if you're picking which team you'd rather play in the playoffs with the Bills, you'd much rather play the Patriots.
Sure.
It's just a team that you had a lot more success against. Mac Jones is absolutely spinning out of control, and not all his fault, but things are bad for Mac Jones in New England right now. That's another guy we can talk a little bit about in a minute here. But I think, A, you want to play New England, so you want Miami not to make the playoffs. So you're rooting for that. And then next week, if they win this week against the Dolphins, you assume the Bills are going to beat them in week 18. It gives them another chance that if the Dolphins lose to the Jets, I think the Patriots then even still get in. They get the tiebreak. I'd have to look at how it all breaks down. But I think you're a Patriots fan all of a sudden if you're a Bills fan, as crazy as that might be to sound.
I think that's right on the money. And again, one part of me says, well, who really doesn't matter. The Patriots aren't a threat. But at the same time, if they could play a role in eliminating the Dolphins, who I still think could be a sneaky team in the playoffs because you still have Tyreek Hill, you still have Jalen Waddle, and anything can happen in the playoffs. You are pulling for the Patriots to maybe pull off that win this weekend and make things really interesting come week 18. So I guess in that scenario, eliminating them in the final week or beating them in the final week and potentially eliminating them is the way to go.
Here's the next question. Do you think the Bills carry on with running the ball as they did against Chicago or go back to a more passing-centric attack? I don't know if that question from our good buddy Hoover over on Twitter is about the Bengals game specifically or like looking ahead moving forward. You can take the question in any direction you want.
Yeah, it's going to depend on the way the games are going. So I think against the Bengals, they're going to try to utilize the run game, keep the ball out of Joe Burrow's hand in that offense. Still use Josh Allen as the passer, still let him use his legs. But if you can take up a lot of the time of possession, if you can run the ball well with Singletary and company and really hurt them in that way, yes. But at the same time, if Burrow and the Bengals come out and they come out firing, they put up 10, 14, 17 points quick, the Bills can't just sit there and keep relying on the run. So it's really a game-by-game plan. It'd be nice to give James Cook and Singletary double-digit carries each game, but it's a game-by-game type of matchup. So it really depends at the end of the day. But I think they're going to come out and try to utilize the run because, again, this is a very high-powered offense they're going to go against, and the fewer times you can get them on the field, the better.
What do you think, AJ?
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think it's going to be a week-to-week thing. Obviously, the Bills and the offense, when you're sitting on the TV and watching it or at the game, they're very fun to, watch when they're throwing the ball in the perfect offensive game. I mean, that was a little mix of both. Singletary had a really good game that week, but Allen threw the ball over the field. I think he was like 21 for 25, and perfect passer rating. So they're definitely at their best, I think, when they're throwing the ball and, taking the big plays. But at the same time, I think what's been working this year is, controlling the pace of the game and, using Josh as more of a runner. So it all depends on the week and the weather. And I know Cincinnati next week, there's a warm front coming. So I think it'll be more of a, pass heavy attack from both sides. So that's my opinion.
I think James Cook is going to open up a lot of things for Josh Allen. Like, I think teams are going to be forced out of how they play against this passing game to try to stop that. I mean, early in games, if he's able to have success, I mean, he broke off that 28-yard run, I think, in the first quarter, right, against the Bears. That immediately, gets defensive coordinators thinking, gets, secondary players thinking. And, this week coming up, if you were talking about the strong suit of this Bengals defense, is probably at the front, right, with their defensive line. Reader's an absolute beast. Hendrickson's on the outside. Then they have some good linebackers. I think they have one good safety. I want to take a deeper dive on them in the next couple of days. But then their cornerbacks, their secondary in general, I wouldn't say that that's the strength of that defense. So, they're going to probably try to take the deep part of the field away, as most teams do against the Bills. And, if they can run the ball a little bit, and the way that James Cook has been getting downhill, to me, that's what can really potentially take force the Bills to keep running if they're having success in that department. We'll see. What's up, buddy? Coming in here. Oh, I think you wanted to show you this, Ryan. So,
all right.
So I'm not a Bills fan anymore, but my son is a huge Bills fan. Huge, right? Who's your favorite player?
Josh.
Who's your second favorite player?
Diggs.
All right, cool. And he got his first pack of football cards.
Ooh.
50 of them.
And
Rookie cards.
he got the booklet with the sleeves that you could kind of put all the cards in.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that was our whole childhood, right? I mean, that was.
Yep.
What was your favorite card? Oh, this was his favorite card, right? The mint condition rookie.
Yeah.
All right, let's show him this one, real quick, and then I gotta go back to work. Okay.
Okay.
Who is that? Show him. Mint condition. Who?
Hang on, let me check. Hang on.
Right there. His name's right there, buddy.
Hang on.
What is it?
Mint condition 2004 Roscoe Parrish rookie card.
Big,
You gotta get that graded.
Roscoe.
You got to
big
get that graded.
time. Yeah, you gotta get that graded.
Speed
We'll talk
for
about that after.
days.
All right, go up. I'm almost done. Okay.
Okay, Dad.
Love you, buddy.
Don't forget about the letter.
I won't. He was really excited to show you that, Ryan. He was talking about that
That's
earlier today.
awesome. That's awesome.
All right. Last couple questions before we get out of here. It's a long show. These Q&A shows can get a little bit long, but that's okay. We're having some fun. We talked about that. Oh, Mike Straw, your old buddy. If Josh Allen was a wrestler, who would he be? And I hope you gave some thought to this.
Oh, I absolutely gave thought to it. It's The Rock. Think about this. When The Rock.
Wait a
first-
second.
No,
I'm
I've
going to
got
have
it.
immediate pushback here.
No, he's The Rock.
Josh
I'm telling
Allen
you.
is not nearly cool enough to be
He's The
great
Rock.
one. No, this is a deplorable wrestling take from you, Ryan.
How much did you follow his career?
The Rock?
Yeah.
I
His
followed every
wrestling career.
piece of it.
So he comes in, he's Rocky Maivia, and it's Rocky sucks. Josh Allen comes into the league. What is it? Josh stinks. Don't draft him. You don't want him. But then he becomes the most electrifying man in on the football
Josh
field.
Allen is not
hurtling.
the most electrifying man.
Oh
in
yeah, on the
sports
football
entertainment.
field, hurtling people, throwing missiles.
No.
Yeah,
No.
he's dealing with an injury to the people's
No,
elbow.
that's terrible.
It's
That's terrible.
He is
The
the
UCL
Rock.
injury's terrible.
He went from Rocky Maivia, no one wanted him, to the Rock. Now that
No,
guy
you know who
that
he
everyone
is?
can't wait.
You know who he
Who
is?
is he?
It's Kurt Angle.
No,
He's
I
Kurt
love
Angle.
Kurt
He's
Angle.
Mr. America. He's everybody's favorite guy. He goes home. He gets a couple cookies. He gets a glass of milk, a big glass of milk. You know, he's Kurt Angle. He's kind of a dork. And he admits it. He's said it on an interview. He is not The Rock. He is not The Rock.
I'm
I
going
take
with The
issue
Rock.
with this.
I'm
This
sticking
is
with
a
it.
terrible take.
Thank you, Donnie Brook. With you 100%. Ryan.
Joshua Allen says, cut Ryan's mic. I agree. I haven't done this in a while, Ryan. I haven't done this in a while. But bang, you're muted. You're muted. And I'm actually going to remove you from the stream because I can't deal with this right now, AJ. I've worked with Ryan Talbot for 5 years. I've had him on the show for 3 years. I really depended on him in this moment. This was his lane to take it. And I don't know if the Kurt Angle one is very good. It probably isn't. But it can't be The Rock. Can't be The Rock. Oh, you're still muted. You could talk, but you're still muted. There you go. You're back. People get mad at me when I take Ryan out of the stream. I haven't done that in a while.
That's right.
People's elbow.
People's elbow. That's it for him. All right. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I just feel like the personas are a little bit different. Like we got to find somebody who's championship caliber, but that doesn't have like, who isn't just super cool. Like The Rock was just the one-liners were just amazing. I don't know. I can't get on board with that. We got to find a different one. Somebody in the comments has to drop a better wrestler comparison. Joshua Allen. That was the most ratchet take ever by Ryan. LOL. There you go. All right. People want to bring it back onto the football field, so that's fine. We will. We got a lot of starred questions. Let's get to some of these. This is a really good one. We'll stick with Joshua Allen over on Facebook. Who is the better number 2 receiver, Gabriel Davis or T. Higgins? And before we start, I feel like it's only fair that we bring up their stats here. I think that they're going to look a little bit differently. We'll see. If you would have asked me this question, by the way, in August, I think I would have given you a different answer than I'm going to give you right now. But here's the comp. 2022 season. Higgins, they're both in their third seasons. Gabe Davis has played in 14 games. T. Higgins has played in 15 games. Gabe Davis has 45 catches for 797 yards and 7 touchdowns. T. Higgins, 73 catches, 1,022 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I'm going T. Higgins, boys. What do you got?
Yeah, right now I have to go T. Higgins as well. And I know Gabe was hampered by the ankle injury for a while, but there's just little things this year. And it wasn't even the fumble last week against the Bears. It was the pass to the end zone where he didn't fight for the ball, where I think he would have drawn a pass interference penalty. Little things like that where I sit there and say, okay, that's something a number 2 receiver should be doing, should be looking to fight for the ball, kind of draw that easy flag. And he just kind of just stood there. And as the guy was face guarding him, let the ball hit off the defender's back. Where I think Higgins has continued to elevate his game. Gabe Davis, he's gotten better and better. It just hasn't, it's been in smaller increments. So I still need to see a little bit more from Davis. I think maybe expectations were a little bit too high after that 4-touchdown game against the Chiefs in the playoffs.
Yeah, building off that point, I think Steve said in the chat, T. Higgins by a mile. I actually agree with that. I mean, I think T. Higgins last year as well had over 1,000 yards, and his rookie year had 900. So I think, obviously T. Higgins was a prized product out of college from Clemson. He was a really good player.
He should have been a first-round pick. I think that was a steal, him falling to the second.
Yeah, so I think T. Higgins is a really good player, and I think, like Ryan said, I think that 4-touchdown performance from Davis last year kind of elevated those expectations very high, and I think, some Bills fans are, like, upset about his production this year. But, yeah, I think Higgins is the better guy.
From Andy on YouTube, is Terrell Bernard a wasted draft pick, 3rd-round pick who is not playing? I'll start this off by saying that the Terrell Bernard pick was never for 2022. And if you went into this season thinking that they were going to make him a safety or a nickel corner or something like that, that never was the case. To me, Terrell Bernard is a pick that you make a smart, versatile linebacker that gives you options down the road, because you're paying Matt Milano a lot right now. But going into this season, I mean, he stayed healthy for the most part this season. Last season was pretty good, but there's been injury concerns over the course of his career. Tremaine Edmonds is coming up, and he's about to be a free agent if you don't bring him back. However that ends up working out, we'll see. But I think, to me, Terrell Bernard was about having some long-term insurance. I think the thing that sticks with people a little bit, Ryan, is that the Bills took him a lot earlier than I think that they needed to. But again, the draft is really something that we might look at a bunch of mock drafts and rankings, but we don't really know what's going on in the rooms. And who knows, maybe somebody else had Terrell Bernard a little bit higher than most. It just feels a little bit higher because I think a lot of draft experts had him going a lot later.
Yeah, and it's too early to say if it's a wasted pick. Time will tell. This year he hasn't been on the field much. We get that, but they already have a top-notch duo in Milano and Edmonds. So like you said, that wasn't part of the plan. It's a kind of wait and see mode, and you just kind of hope that the Bills were right in their analysis. Everything they did in the draft process, they said they had a private workout with him. They ran him through some things, and he really picked up the defense well. So it's going to be one of those players that maybe come injury or maybe opportunity, we'll have to wait to see the field.
All right, next one here, our good friend, loyal listener of the show, Rick Rarick over on YouTube. Any update on Mitch Morse? There isn't, unfortunately. Usually we would have talked to Sean or maybe the coordinators again. I don't know how the exact math would have worked out, but because of the storm, the Bills kind of pushed off a lot of stuff, and there will be nothing now, from Sunday to Thursday. So we won't talk to anybody. So the Bills don't have to give an update. As of now, there hasn't been a report out any differently. He's still in the concussion protocol. It's going to be a day-to-day thing. Thursday will be a huge update. Like, check your Twitter feeds around 12:30 when Sean McDermott talks. A bunch of reporters will tweet out, the update on Mitch Morse, whether he'll practice, if he's returning to practice, even on a limited basis. That's huge news. Even if he's not out of the protocol, that could mean that he is making some progress there. So we'll have a definitive update on Mitch. Is that your
that's
little girl?
No, that's the old one. I don't know. They're
Old
both
one?
losing their minds tonight. The puppy's
What?
barking.
You know why?
The old one's barking.
They heard your rock take on Josh Allen.
I'm
And they
telling
can't even stand it. They
I'm
can't
telling you.
keep from making all of this noise in the background. I understand. It's okay, little ones.
Dogs.
All right. I think we got through a lot of them. If we didn't get through everything, we went an hour and 5 minutes here. We will come back, ask them in the comments of the next show. We try to get to as many as we can. Final thought. Let's go around the horn. AJ, Ryan, and I'll close it out.
All right. My final thought is I'm going to go back to the Nick Wright thing that you guys were talking about earlier. Nick Wright is a Chiefs fan, and you know what they say, the person they criticize the most is the one they fear the most. Nick Wright knows what Allen did last year in Arrowhead, and that's why he's most feared, just like why I did not like LeBron for many years, because he would steal Curry's rings. It's the same way with this. That's why Nick Wright is the way he is, and Allen is a top 2 quarterback in this league, and that's why Nick Wright, has his takes about Allen and why he's not that good since week 6.
Yeah, Bills Mafia, going back to kind of the topic of tonight's show, I understand there's a lot riding on these next 2 weeks with the number 1 seed. I understand the expectations, but don't forget to enjoy the ride. If you are a member of the Bills Mafia, don't forget how bad it was for many, many years before Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane came along. You've reached the point now, and we as people who have covered the team, where playoffs are now an expectation. It's no longer maybe this is the year they get in. Yes, it is now the expectation, but don't let that take away from the enjoyment of the game on a week-to-week basis.
Speaking of enjoying the game, every game should be enjoyed after a diligent trip to the Tops Carryout Cafe, where you can just peruse all of the different options, ready to go for game day, tailgating spreads, or any occasion. Hot to go, fresh, large cheese and pepperoni pizzas are $14. Jumbo chicken wing, 10 count, $14. The Tops legendary breakfast pizza, a large, is $20. I'm sure many people enjoyed that when Tops reopened here over the last couple of days. Pizza and taco logs, 6 count, $7.69. Baby back rib sections, $5.99 a pound. Subs, sandwiches, wraps, apps, sides, and so much more. Visit topsmarkets.com/redzone for the complete menu of ready-to-enjoy fan favorites. Final thought from me, I just want to send out, love and support, thinking about all people that have been affected by these horrible events over the last couple of days. They're dealing with this weather event. People that have, lost their lives and have dealt with people that were, trapped in cars, trapped in houses. It's been a tough 48, 76, however many hours it's been for everybody. I kind of lost count at this point. I mean, we're a couple days removed, so it's more than that. But yeah, it's just, you've seen some really good things. Obviously, you've seen some kind of disappointing things. And I just hope everybody out there, if you've been affected, just know that we're all thinking of you. For AJ, for Ryan, I am Matt Parrino. We will be back on Thursday night. Smash that like button, subscribe before you go. We'll see you then. Take care, everybody.